So it's time to look at automating our enemy spawning. We'll be building this in a flexible way from the start. This will work for enemies to begin with, but we're going to future-proof it just a little bit so that this will work with things like background objects or anything else that may need to appear over time. No more manually placing enemies, which will be the first important step. So to get started, we're going to go into our blueprint folder, and we'll just create this inside of a new folder structure. So I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-N for a new folder, call this one Spawners. Right-click, we'll go to Blueprint Class, and we want to create our bog standard actor class. As I've mentioned, this is just a container. It has a transform, a place in the world, and then we can drop our logic in here. We'll give this one the name of BP_spawner base. So as I've mentioned, forward planning a little bit, we're not going to specify that this will be just for enemies, and we may have other spawners that will be a child of this class with inheritance. Inside of this, we just want to go straight to our event graph. There's nothing that we need to visually add to represent this. And I think in this case, we can get rid of the actor begin overlap, and most things in here should be responsive, so we shouldn't be doing any checks and updates constantly on the event tick, so we can get rid of both of these function calls. We can drive our core logic from a custom function. I'll just move this over. We'll create a new function here, and I'll call this one spawn actor. So again, everything that we're doing as we go through and plan is trying to keep this very generic. We're not saying spawn background piece, spawn pickup, spawn enemy. All we need to pass in is an argument of the type of actor that we want to spawn, and we'll probably need maybe some random rotation, an offset, a location, and things like that. We can make this nice and generic and make everything very reusable. So always trying to plan ahead. Remember, think lazy, plan, program once, and use as many times as possible. Inside of this function, we'll pull from the execution pin, and we actually have a built-in function inside of Unreal named spawn actor from class. When we're using this function, the main thing that we want, as I've mentioned, is a transform, so where we want this to spawn, and specifically what type of class we want to spawn in. So at the moment, that could be things like our enemy, but again, that would be too specific. So if we highlight and hover over the purple pin here, we can see that this is just specifically referencing the type of actor. So these purple pins are the actual class references themselves, not an instance in the world. When we have these blue pins, this is an actual instance that exists in the world. We can kind of think of the purple pins as a reference to the location inside of our folder structure. So we're going to make use of this generic typing. We're going to pull from here, and we'll actually promote this to a variable. We'll give this one the name of actor type, and we can make use of this now that we can fill this with any type of actor in our project, whether that is an enemy, a pickup, a background piece when we add them, whatever we wanted. We can now tell this function to spawn that at a given point. The main things that we're going to want to expose are the spawn transform details. So if we right click on this, we'll split the structure pin. We're going to leave the spawn transform scale to 1, 1, and 1. Generally, we try not to override these. If everything's been set up correctly, as with this project, all of the assets should be the correct scale to begin with. So we'll keep this and just assume that the assets are imported and working as intended. You do have the option to randomize or offset the rotation, but I'm going to keep this nice and clean for now, and we can always come back and rework this later. What I'll do instead is I'm going to right click and search for get actor rotation. The reason for this is this means that we can plug this straight in, and wherever we rotate our spawner, we have full control in the editor. So this is more of an editor tool now, where if I wanted this to spawn things sideways, I just need to remember to rotate the actual spawner sideways. Alternatives would be to expose this to a variable and manually plug in the rotation, but I find this can be quite a nice way to work. It's just a little bit more intuitive for me, as long as it's not too restrictive, which I think in this case, we should be fine. For the location, we're going to pull from here, and we'll add a plus pin. This one may need a little bit of randomization, some variance and offsets applied. If we right click, we can search for get actor location. So same thing again, we're going to use the general properties of wherever the spawner is. So that will be our base starting point. Now for this type of game, because we know that we're only going from a top-down perspective, we don't need any randomization on the Z, and we probably want to do all of our spawning off screen, which means we also will not need any randomization on the X-axis. So what we could do is we could right click on this second vector pin and split the structure. We'll pull from our Y pin just here, and we want to use that select node that we've seen previously. We want not select float, we want this one here with the unique icon. This gives us the wildcard that we've used previously. We'll change this to a boolean, so we're either going to randomize or not. And I'll promote the index here to a new variable, and we'll name this one add random offset. Again, remembering to give that a lowercase b. If we decide to add a random offset, we want to provide some kind of floating value within a range. And again, we've seen how to do this, so we're now just layering upon the functionalities and approaches that we've already taken in the past. So if this is true, if we're adding a random offset, we'll pull from here, and we're going to use that random float in range function that we've seen before. And from this, we want just a distance, so a minimum and a maximum sideways distance that we can apply. So if we get our maximum float here, and we'll just promote this one to a variable, and we'll just give this one the name of offset distance. The minimum is, as we've seen before with speeds and things like that, is just going to be the inverse negative. So we can control drag in the offset distance, multiply this by -1, and then plug the result in here. So if we set a distance of, let's say, 100 units, and we want that to happen either side from the center of the screen, we'd place this spawning actor in the center of the screen, plug in the value 100 in the offset distance, and that means it can either spawn at -100, +100, or some value in between. If we decide not to expose the variable and we don't have the random offset enabled, then we're just going to add false. So we're going to add 0 to our overall transform, which means the actor will spawn exactly where we've placed it. So relatively simple, but it's still kind of a developer tool, something we can build upon if more complexity is needed, but it gives us some flexibility and variation in our project, which will just generally make things look more interesting and fun to play with. Now, one thing I haven't shown yet, and I want to introduce here because we are kind of making a very rudimentary developer tool, this is something which is really useful inside of Unreal. Other engines do similar things, and that is allowing people to see the variables outside of the class. At the moment, for example, if we grab one of our spawner classes and just drop this into the world, making sure that we've compiled and saved everything, we can see here that with the object selected, none of those variables that we've just created are actually exposed. So we wouldn't be able to manually come in on a per instance basis. So if we had 3 or 4 of these, we wouldn't be able to pick that this one had some randomization and a unique distance, and this one had no randomization, for example. We currently only have one place we can change that, and that is just here in the graph. So we'd either get this boolean and turn it off, and then that's on or off for all of them. And likewise for the distance. The really useful way that we can override this are these icons here. You may not have touched them just yet, but if we click these on, it provides a small eye icon. By default, they start closed, and we can open the eye. In other languages, this is referred to as making something public. It's exposed to other classes and readable and writable outside of just this class. Inside of Unreal Blueprint, this is just making the variable editable, essentially, outside of the class here. So if we go into our viewport again, with the same object selected, you can see that in the default dropdown, we have access to the type of actor that we want this to spawn. So this is where we could start doing things like, this could be an enemy spawner. We're not going to do this, but this could be a player spawner. So we already have some flexibility in what these are going to spawn. And then because the enemies might want to be more random, we could turn this one on to be true, to add a random offset in either direction. And we could set that to be, as I've said, maybe 100 units to the left and to the right of the spawner. So nice and simple, as you've seen. It's not a very complex setup, but we already have a relative amount of flexibility and freedom with how we use this. So at the moment, if we were to add this on begin play and get this to be called once, one enemy isn't going to be a whole lot of a challenge for our player. So what we want to do is add some continuous spawning. We're going to avoid using things like delays and loops as this becomes messy and inflexible. So you may have seen something like this before, where on begin play, again, I just want to visualize some of the things that I've seen in plenty of projects. So you may have something like, we'll come in the first time and we'll spawn an actor once. We'll then add a delay. So a delay is just a timed kind of waiting process. We'll wait, let's say 3 seconds before we do the next thing, and then we'll spawn actor again. And you may be tempted to then come into here, and maybe after each time this is done, try and find a way to recall itself. It's going to become messy. You end up seeing people do things like this, will loop background, and you end up with this infinite loop where people say that after we've spawned this, we're going to wait another 3 seconds and call the spawn actor again. So we're going to avoid this beginner style code. What we want to use instead is something called timers. These are much cleaner, and it gives us a lot more control over if and when they get called. So off of our begin play, the execution pin, we want to find a function called isValid. We want this option with the question mark at the bottom. This is checking if another object or actor is currently valid, meaning does it exist and is it not being sent to garbage collection for cleaning if it's being destroyed or something like that. From the input object, so the thing we want to check if it exists, we're going to pull from here and use that built-in function, the getPlayerPawn. So this is, again, just one of those things to consider. It happens in a lot of new developers' games where you've made a game like this and the enemies have destroyed the player, but even when you're at the game over screen or you're just waiting for the credits or whatever's happening afterwards, you can see the enemies still spawning in or shooting at the player, kind of dogpiling on a dead body. It just looks a little bit intense, and it's usually because there's no checking going on mid-game to see if the player's actually classed as dead or no longer available. So what we're going to do is, if the player's been removed from play, there's no more need for enemies to spawn in, so we're going to stop. If this is true, so if the player is still valid, we're going to call a function here, which is the setTimer by function name. We want this option here, and the first thing that we can fill in is the time here. So this is how long we're going to wait until this function that we'll create in a moment is called. So for the time itself, we can pull from here, and we can search for another random float in range. And a small trick, which can be quite useful when you're not looking to just have the minimum and maximum of something just be the inverse of each other, we can make use of something called a vector 2D. So if we create a new variable, we'll name this one spawn intervals, and we're going to drop this down, and we're going to search here, rather than a vector, which is a 3-point floating value, we're going to look for vector 2. We want this one down here, the vector 2D, and if we hit compile, we can see all this is just 2 floating point values instead, where the x value is going to be our minimum, and the y value will be a maximum. So we could set this to something like a minimum of 3 seconds before something spawns in, and a maximum of 6, and we can come back and tweak this later. We can control drag this into the graph, right-click on the structure pin, split the structure pin here, and we can say minimum, maximum. So a nice kind of clean, tidy way to set up the timing function. For the function name, we have our spawn actor over here. One thing I always tend to do, again, partly because I'm lazy and don't want to type things, but also to avoid making spelling errors or typing errors, I'm going to press F2 to rename this, press Ctrl+C to copy, and then Ctrl+V over here to paste this in, ensuring that we have the same spelling, the same capitalization, avoiding any errors in the name because this is case sensitive and needs to be spelled exactly the same. We're not going to set this to looping, but if you did have a function where you want it to keep going constantly, you could set this to looping and it would just keep going round and round and essentially calling itself. We're going to want a little bit more manual control, so I'll make sure that this isn't ticked on. And what we can do is if we grab all of this code, including the isValid, because if you think about this, when we first begin play, there's no reason that the player pawn wouldn't actually be a valid object. It's always going to exist when we press play. So what we're going to do instead is we'll right-click on any of these nodes, and we'll collapse this into a function. We'll give this the name of call spawn actor timer. So we're just kind of obfuscating out the logic a little bit here. So again, the steps are a little bit more clear and easy to understand as we go through our code. And the way that we actually want to handle this is we're probably going to want to create some enemies straight away. So rather than spawning based on a timer, we can bypass this first of all. So we'll start by spawning an actor straight in. We'll drop this onto our execution pin. And again, just thinking about the order of logic in our code. So we can always rework things like this. So we're going to begin play and we're going to spawn an actor straight away. What this will do, it will drop in here. We're going to then pick our actor type if we have one set, pick a location and an offset if there's an offset to be applied, and select the rotation and spawn that in at a point. Then after this is where we can start doing an almost automatic looping here. So if we wanted this to keep going, we could take our call spawn actor timer, drop this on just here, and what this will now do is this will go in, and this is more important here, because at runtime, this is where something after the first or second spawn, we may have had the player get destroyed. So this will now do our isValid check, a really simple, cheap check to make sure that the player is still in the game. And if they are, we're going to allow it to spawn another actor, so using the spawn actor function, basically calling this function again after a set period or interval of time. Now, something that I quite like doing, and this is completely optional, but because when we're using the set timer by function name function, we can't double click and find what this is actually calling. We'd need to look through our function list and find the name which matches. What I quite like to do is I'll grab the function over here and just drop this below the set timer by function name. So this means if I'm ever looking through my code in the future, if I get to this point and realize I need to fix or change something in this function here, I can just double click this node and that will take me to what that function is calling. So just a really small tip there, but I find that can be really useful, especially when you're coming back to tweak things. If this ended up not being flexible enough or you needed to remove something, just a nice way to navigate around. But that's pretty much everything that we needed. That is a nice kind of self-encapsulated, self-controlled spawner with some flexibility on the different actor types that we can spawn in, where they're going to spawn, and if there's any randomization applied. We could also come down here and expose the spawn intervals as well. So we could have each different actor, each different spawner, having different timed intervals on when things should spawn in. So make sure that we hit compile and save. One thing that I do want to add before we actually go and test this is if we go to the component section, we're going to add something here. I'm going to search for the arrow component. So there's actually a component here we can use, which is just a visual arrow. We can change the color if you wanted to change the color for different reasons. But the main thing is, again, at a glance, this will just allow us to know which way is forward. So it's always defaulting to point forward. So if we hit compile and save, go back into the main level, we can see, in fact, here the enemies will be facing the wrong way. So I'm going to get rid of some of these. We'll just test with one at a time. Make sure this isn't overlapping with the floor. Otherwise, the enemies won't be able to move. And then we can just rotate this 180 degrees on the Z. And you can see that that is now pointing towards our player start, which means if we set this to our enemy class, we could give this a random distance either side and a spawn interval's fine there. We can press play and that will spawn one in straight away. And then within 3 to 6 seconds, we should see another one spawn in. And there we go. So we have our random spawning actor working correctly. By providing the rotation that I mentioned, we can see exactly where this is going to spawn and which direction it'll be facing. The main issue that we have now is, of course, that we can see them popping in. So we want to move this back a little bit so that they're spawning off screen. They'll do that animation and then they'll spawn in with that given interval. If you wanted them at slightly different positions, or if you wanted more of them, you could stagger it this way. So we could have multiple spawners. You could provide different offset distances, different spawn intervals, and you could kind of stagger them that way a little bit. Again, to make the gameplay and interaction that much more interesting. I think at the moment we could probably get away with just one spawner for our enemies. If we find out or decide there's not quite enough being spawned at runtime, we can come back and add more or play around with these spawn intervals. So another little bit of experimentation or homework you can give yourself. You could do some simple things here like duplicating the spawner and try different configurations, as I've just mentioned. Try different spawn intervals, different offset distances, enable or disable the randomization. And ideally, if you've gone outside of the content so far and created your own different enemy types, you may have enemies that only move forward or backwards or side to side, whatever the case might be. Maybe try adding some different spawners for different enemies just to see how you can really easily make use of this somewhat flexible system. And that's the main thing here, is we're looking at and thinking about how we engineer our systems. We could have created one actor class specifically for spawning only enemies. We could have came into the class and hard-coded the logic here to specifically spawn enemies. We would have then needed to have done the same thing for a different enemy type or the backgrounds when we get to that. Essentially a lot of duplicate work again, more things to go wrong and more bugs to fix. Whereas with this approach, we can reuse this for the backgrounds later, different enemy types, bosses, whatever you wanted to make use of this for. Just to bring up the course, I'm still coming up with ideas on the extended version of this, breaking apart that Patreon project into its own very specific course, very detailed content. It would cover things like wave-based spawning patterns, trying to cover more of classic bullet hell shoot 'em up patterns that you might see for the enemies, the projectile patterns, and everything like that. So this is very foundational. The course would be created with the intention to go much deeper into wave structures, spawning, how to handle and share this logic. So again, links for that in the description if you're interested in that type of content. As I've said in the past, the main thing at the moment is just to help me gauge the level of interest and if that's worth dedicating the time to create something like that. Big thanks as always to everyone supporting the channel through YouTube memberships and Patreon. The support for the channel is what allows me to make this more in-depth, topical content, so I'm hoping that there's some value and you're finding this useful.